folks, welcome into another episode of That Betting Show for August 9, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. He's Teddy Severansky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at Rightside VP. How did we do last night, Teddy? 11 games last night in NFL preseason action. But there's still some Major League Baseball that we're going to get into as the Mets and Nationals get underway tonight in New York. But let's get right to those hot topics, Teddy. We're gamblers here. It's sportsbookreview.com. We all watch these things. How about going for it on fourth down in odd spots as betting the preseason on full display last night? Take this one, Teddy. Dolphins and Falcons tied at 27, 2 minutes left in the game, 4th and 9. Like, hey, you know what? They're going to punt it away. We'll see if we can get a drive. The Falcons go for it and take a sack, which sets up a touchdown, the game-winning touchdown for the Miami Dolphins. And, oh, yeah, if you're looking at Tennessee, hey, you know what? Got Tennessee, getting 3 points in this game, get a nice first drive. We're going to get out there and kick a field goal. It's fourth down, Teddy. They go for it and don't get it. Oh, the perils of betting that preseason, huh?
Well, that's what preseason betting is about. You need to know these things. Atlanta doesn't care. Dan Quinn said he doesn't care. We saw it last night when you're going for it on fourth down from your own 16-yard line late in the fourth quarter. It tells you, I don't care about winning and losing. And there are coaches out there that don't, and that was on full display. Of course, there was all kinds of crazy stuff last night. Misleading finals. Let's talk about that to begin with. Arizona, and I can't stick with Arizona last night. They were not the right side. The Chargers starters crushed the Arizona starters. Arizona lucky to be in the game in order to steal it late or in the second half of that contest. But when it was first stringers versus first stringers, that was no contest. LA annihilated Arizona, even though Arizona won the game. I'm seeing people talk. I'm reading commentary today that the Texans outplayed the Packers. No, they didn't. Okay, Joe Webb was awful in that ball game for the better part of 3 quarters, and then the Packers brought in their fourth stringers, and Joe Webb moved the football, and Texans put up a bunch of yards late and won the box score late. They got the push late as well. Pretty tough beat if you laid points with Green Bay. They were clearly the right side in that contest. And, of course, we got to talk about the timeout with Ron Rivera calling the timeout. Not to allow the field goal, but to let the field goal kicker practice being iced before halftime. Of course, he makes the 43-yarder, and lo and behold, the game lands right on 36, which was the closing total. So that ice the kicker dealio, I don't think it made any difference, but you can blame it if you didn't cash your under ticket for the Bears and the Panthers last night.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting stuff as it goes the way around. Now, we've been around the block for quite a few times. Just looking at it from a fan's perspective, Teddy, games 1 and 4 in the preseason really make you scratch your head at times. Games 2, you get a little bit more starters in there, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Games 3, almost that dress rehearsal where most teams will play their starters for up to a half at that point. But we'll keep an eye on it as it goes to get you ready for football right here on That Betting Show. How about a little wild card update? Seems like we're going to get some updates each and every day because the NL East, the NL Central, everybody's just tilting. Who's going to get those last 2 wildcard playoff spots? Braves and the Phillies both go down on Thursday. 2 top spots now deal with the Nationals and the Milwaukee Brewers. They seem to change each and every day. Giants only 3 back, have a chance to really get themselves back in the race or at least leapfrog the Philadelphia Phillies as they won last night. We'll see 3 more games between these 2 groups. The odds have not changed, Teddy, from what we were talking about yesterday, who's making the playoffs and who's not. But it looks like there's going to be a lot of trading spaces throughout the rest of the summer in the NL wildcard race.
Sure has that feel, doesn't it? And, of course, we talked yesterday. I personally talked yesterday about how the Cards can't win it, and the Phillies are flawed, and the Mets are about to play 24 of their next 27 against elite teams, and the D-backs are flawed, and the Brewers are flawed, and all those teams aren't going to win. So I'm like, it's the Nats and somebody. Why not Bochy, Badbum, and the Giants for Madbum and the Giants for one last playoff run? Of course, the win yesterday snapped a 4-game skid for the Giants, so it's not like they've exactly been playing great ball either. But out of that group, San Fran has to be considered to be in the mix, even though for most of this season that squad's been nothing but a major disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, heading down the stretch, we'll see what happens today. As we said, there's going to be a big, which we'll talk about a little bit later with a preview with that series between the Nationals and the Mets, but should be a lot of fun to go down. Hey, some money to be made out there, and we'll certainly bring it to you right here on That Betting Show on sportsbookreview.com. Around training camp, obviously, wasn't many practices yesterday because we had dress rehearsals in preseason football games. How about those Giants quarterbacks, Eddie, playing well? If you could just meld them all together for the rest of the season, 29 for 37, 374, 3 touchdowns, and how about this? No interceptions between those guys. Mayfield and the Browns opening fast. Dwayne Haskins struggles a little bit with his reads out there, and the teacher runs over the student in that Detroit-New England game, Teddy.
Yeah, but let's not forget the 3 Giants quarterbacks you saw on the field yesterday. They're all on the depth chart behind Eli Manning. So for as good as their preseason performance was, and let's not forget, with any of the stats that you see, was the defense blitzing? Was the offensive line capable of picking up the blitz? And bettors expected the Jets to blitz a lot more than they did in Greg Williams' debut as DC defense coordinator for the Jets. One of a number of defenses that played really well. I mean, the Ravens' defense was insane. Like the Jags, 2.1 yards per play for an entire game. Mustache. Gardner Minshew was terrible in that ballgame, and let's give Baltimore's defense credit. Jacoby Brissett, who's been a solid backup for Indy, he was awful against the Bills' defense. Awful. Maybe we give Buffalo a little credit for what they were able to accomplish in that ballgame. And, of course, you talk to one other guy. We got to talk to Dwayne Haskins, because Haskins, the reports out of camp were that he was struggling in practice and throwing too many picks. What happened last night? He struggled and threw a pair of picks, and they were difference makers in the Browns' blowout win over Washington.
It's always fun to watch, Teddy, because especially being on social media, whether it be Facebook, more importantly, Twitter, as you're watching these games, Dwayne Haskins made a quick throw early, and people were putting him in the Hall of Fame. My goodness, I told you he was the most talented quarterback in this draft. Give it about 30 minutes of time on social media. Now we want to bench him and put him back in third string for the Washington Redskins as it moves forward. It's always fun to watch these things in real time because we've had that pent-up frustration, Teddy, since February. No Super Bowl acts. After the Super Bowl, you go all the way through. Now you finally see some football. We'll settle in. A couple more games tonight, which we'll go over in just a little bit. But it's time to talk a little bit of college football. And the number 1 overall team in the land. We finally made it all the way through the top 20, which tells you one thing here. We're really close to college football season. 2019 Alabama Crimson Tide team review. Alabama plus 230 to win the 2019 NCAA title. The Tide team total is at 11 and juice to the over at minus 130. Finished 14-1 last year, as we all know, in 2018. 8-0 in the SEC and did get clunked in the championship game by those Clemson Tigers. Nick Saban's racked up 237 college football wins in his career going into his 24th overall season. He's got the Heisman frontrunner again here, Tua Tagovailoa, is going to come into the season, and he has some weapons, Teddy, at wide receiver. We know they always lose running back talent each and every year, but they just reload at that position. Should be fun to watch. And taking a look from the 2018 defense, 18.1 points per game, ranking 12th in the nation. They do return 7 starters. Bama gets LSU at home this year on November 9th, but the Iron Bowl in the Plains at Auburn this year, Teddy. Talk about those Clemson. Talk about those Alabama Crimson Tide this year.
Exactly. The emails will start pouring in if you start saying, talk about the Clemson team. We talked about Clemson yesterday. Alabama. I'm just going to read some numbers. 14-0, 10-3, 12-1, 13-1, 11-2, 12-2, 14-1, 14-1, 13-1, 14-1. That's their record the last 10 years. No program in college football comes close. They're ranked number 1 every year for a reason. From a talent perspective, Alabama is as good as it gets. From a program perspective, Alabama is as good as it gets. From a head coaching perspective, Saban is as good as it gets. And despite the fact that Alabama competes for the national championship every single year, despite the fact that everyone knows they have more talent than anyone else in college football every single year, despite the fact that the media spotlight is shining on Alabama the way that it shines on no other team during this entire 10-year span, 78, 60, and 2 against the spread. Strong money winners. Only one losing point spread season in that entire 10-year span. 6-8 ATS. Half their players, maybe more, could make an NFL roster today. All right. All that being said, this is a really hard team to bet on. They were minus 14 at LSU last year. They were minus 12.5 against Georgia on a neutral field in the SEC title game. They laid 24.5 against Auburn. They laid 26.5 against A&M. These are not mediocre programs we're talking about. We're talking about huge point spreads against elite teams. The markets do not offer value on the Alabama Crimson Tide week in, week out. But on the other hand, do you want to fade Saban and company? We know what Saban's done. We talked about the point spread record over the last 10 years, how they don't lose. They're not getting crushed. The worst season, 6-8, 2014 ATS. Not a team I want to back. Not a team there's value with. Not a team I want to fade. not a team I'm going to get involved with a whole lot. The one good news about Alabama, and of course, there's 130 teams in college football. You don't need to be making bets on or against the number one team in the nation every week. They're not a team I want to fade. They're not a team I want to back. They're an easy team to pass. But at least we get to make fun of Sark again. Steve Sarkisian back as the OC in Alabama. He's a fun guy to make fun of.
Yeah, it should be interesting to go through the season there, but it's always nice that we now have a playoff where it's Alabama, it's Clemson. At least you can squeeze some of two other teams in there. We'll see if they get through that attrition of the SEC, which is what we always talk about. And you saw that argument early in the week saying, hey, Bama's too beat up by the time they get to Clemson. We'll see if that provides the same type of tonic this year at the end. Overnight line movers here, Teddy. We say it each and every day, the best place on the internet to get these line changes, it's SBRodds.com. How about this one? This is interesting. This is a preseason football game tomorrow since we're setting you up on the weekend. We're going to talk about here. Bengals backers pushed the line a little bit lower. Now, here's what's interesting. You saw Andy Reid coming out, which we're going to talk about in a little bit of the off-topic segment a little bit later today. But looking at this game, you're going to have your starting quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, probably play the full first quarter, but yet this line opens up at 5, Teddy. Now we see it sitting at 3.5 with the Chiefs. So the Bengals getting the 3.5 number there, total of 36.5. Both teams' first preseason game. What gives here, Teddy?
Well, let's read the direct quote from Andy Reid. Quote, I do it by quarterbacks. So Patrick Mahomes is the first quarter, and then Chad Henne is the second quarter, and Kyle Shermer the third quarter, and Chase Laton the fourth quarter. Then the guys fall in. Everybody will play in the game. The main thing is that we get some of the young guys some playing time. You normally cut down the game plan a little bit for this. Just take some of the simpler plays, the easier plays that you run during camp, and let them go out and play. I mean, obviously with Mahomes and Henne playing in the first half, that's a pretty good QB rotation. But on the other side of the equation, for Cincinnati, brand new coaching staff, new coordinators. I mean, it's really a new coaching staff across the board for the first time since George W. Bush was president. It's been a while. And we're expected to see plenty of Ryan Finley and Jeff Driscoll tonight. Both of the guys who, Driscoll in particular, he's a bet-on coach in the preseason. And Andy Reid, week ones, well, Kansas City 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread. Their last 3 tries here in week one. There may be a bet on for KC, especially for a first half wager, but there's no bet against for Cincinnati in this ballgame. Hence, the money, modest money, coming on the Bengals.
How about another Saturday preseason game to tee it up for here in the line on the move? Teddy, I see him on my TV. They look really cool. I want to bet them here. How about that Hard Knocks effect where the Raiders opened up at -3, now sit at -5? Those Rams and Raiders, which are having joint practices, similar to what the Texans and the Green Bay Packers had. Total of 35, moneyline split plus 185, -215. Both teams' first preseason game. The Hard Knocks Raiders, Teddy.
Yeah, and this one actually got bet up to 6 before there was some buyback on LA, and it's very clear. The Rams do not care one iota about this ballgame. And this is a weird schedule for LA. They only had like a week of training camp, and they broke camp. They've been doing joint practices. Now they're up in Oakland, and they're going out to Hawaii. And basically between now and like week 2 of the regular season, this team's going to fly like 20,000 miles. It's a really sick preseason and early regular season slate for LA. And, I mean, it's not a team that has shown any interest. From everything I've read from Sean McVay, they don't care. Game in the market's reflecting that. And for Oakland, the QB rotation is bet on. Carr, Glennon, Peterman. I know we don't want Peterman in a regular season game or Glennon, but in a preseason game against second and third and fourth string defenders, those are bet on QBs. Peterman can make plays with his feet as well, and he's playing with something to prove, all of which is Oakland pro. But the point spread's a great equalizer. Again, at -5, that's the biggest point spread in week 1. Maybe it's there for a reason. I don't want LA, but it's not like you get any bargains backing the Raiders in this price range.
Cryotherapy or not, Teddy, they will play this ball game. Should be fun to watch. Let's take a look at a little bit of Major League Baseball games on the move. Hey, look. Philadelphia Phillies got shut down 2 straight nights. Almost no hit last night, coming up with one Cesar Hernandez single off Madison Bumgarner. They're going to take it again out in San Francisco today. The Phillies, however, Teddy, flipped to a favorite. Phillies open up plus 102, plus 103. Now we're checking at SBRodds.com right now, Teddy. I'm seeing -120s, -118s on the board with a total of 8.5. Going to be Smiley and Beatty tonight.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. Number 1 is not my money coming in on Smiley. But number 2, it's worth noting, and Smiley's been so up and down. this season. 2 starts ago, he shut out the Giants. 7 innings of 4-hit baseball. Brilliant in that ballgame. Of course, then last time out, he got lit up by the White Sox, but the market's saying Smiley capable of doing that again. Bettors need to pay attention. Not this better. I think San Fran may be the better of these 2 teams right now.
Just give me 2 hits tonight, Phillies, and we'll be satisfied over here in the Delaware Valley. Watch what you bet right here on That Betting Show. Let's talk a little bit of baseball before we dip right back into the football ranks. AL Showdown game number 2 was an interesting one last night as the Cleveland Indians pull one out despite a manic effort to get back into the game by those Minnesota Twins. Twins plus 131 today. Total of 9.5 is going to be at 8-10 tonight. MLB extra innings from Target Field. Indians now, how about this, 69-46. Those Twins, 70-45. Looking right in that rearview mirror. The Indians are right there, ready to pull even. Bieber versus Smeltzer tonight.
Sure. The 11.5 game lead is now down to 1, and the pressure is on the home team more than the 3-time defending AL Central champs. I truly believe that. Cleveland's been in these games. Minnesota hasn't. Cleveland's on the road. Minnesota, hey, we got to make hay with this series at home. And you've blown 10.5 and 11.5 game lead. All of a sudden, the pressure ratchets up. Brad Hand, following his save last night, for sure, it felt like a playoff game. Everyone knows this is a big series. All 4 of these games are going to be important. It's going to be a fun series for sure. Worth noting that Hand needed 31 pitches to get out of the 9th inning last night. He will not be available. And when your closer is not available, that is probably something of a concern. The Twins have now lost 3 in a row, however. Smeltzer is an interesting story. 4th career start. Did get hit hard by Cleveland once already this season. Gave up 4 home runs in 6 1/3 innings of that ball game. But he's coming off his first big league win against the Royals. 2 hits over 6 shutout innings last time out. The biggest issue for this game of all of them, Nelson Cruz, who's been absolutely, positively on fire for Minnesota. Well, he got hurt last night. He hurt his wrist. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to go, and it may be something serious. So worth noting, Minnesota could be minus a very big bet this evening.
Yep, Yasiel Puig providing the push behind the Cleveland Indians to get them over the hump. We'll see if they can take care of that tonight and even it up. But we'll get back to a little bit of football. Bruce Arians' era gets underway in Pittsburgh tonight. Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach. If you watch anything HBO Real Sports, even watched anything on Bruce Arians over the past couple of years, he's just a really cool dude. There's somebody that I really like to root for here, but it is the preseason. Just because you root for him doesn't mean you're going to win any money with those guys. Buccaneers and the Steelers. Steelers -2, total of 37.5. The money line split here, plus 120, -140 tonight, 7:30 p.m. NFL Network. Both teams' first preseason game here, Teddy, in Pittsburgh.
This is not a bet on quote from Bruce Arians. Quote, young players, they're going to play the majority of the game, 80% of it. 1 or 2 of them are either going to get exposed or have good exposure, and that's really what this is all about. That's what we talk to them about it. What they're putting on tape is not just for us. 31 other teams are going to look at it. So you want to put the best thing you have on tape to be evaluated. That's not, we're trying to win the game. That's not, I'm worried about my QB rotations. That's, everybody's going to get a chance to show something on film. That's not a bet on quote. That being said, let's start with, Pittsburgh has the QB rotation you want. We talk about Dobbs and Rudolph. These are bet-on QBs in a preseason game, and frankly, that duo would scare me to bet against. It'd be Pittsburgh or pass for this better, clearly. But over the years, you talk about how you and I are savvy veterans. Coach speak matters in the preseason. And when a coach says one thing about what he's going to do in a preseason game and then does something different, it stands out like a red flag. And there aren't many coaches in preseason that have done that. Mike Tomlin's one of them. Tomlin has said, I'm going to go with the backups for this long. And then he said, I changed my mind. Those are difficult situations to deal with in week 1. He's pretty random. Now, over the last 2 years, Tomlin and the Steelers 3-1 straight up, 3-1 against the spread in the preseason. He's been a pretty good preseason bet on coach. And week 1, W&W. However, that is not a long-term track record. And I have no idea what Tomlin wants to bring to the equation this week. Pittsburgh or pass, probably going to be pass.
8 o'clock tonight, Teddy. Back to the scene of the crime. I know we all watched last year in the NFC title game that horrendous missed pass interference call, which sent the Rams into the Super Bowl as opposed to the Saints. Saints will get back underway. It's time for a new season here, and to get over it, Saints fans who are still out here trying to sue, and maybe you can go back and change history and put them in the Super Bowl. Can't do it. Vikings Saints -2.5 as the Saints are a favorite. Total, Teddy, 37.5. Moneyline split +120, -140. NFL preseason action 8 p.m. tonight live from the Superdome. Both teams' first preseason games. What can we expect here?
Well, if you're going by coach's track record, you ain't laying with New Orleans. All right, Zimmer, 5-0 straight up, 5-0 ATS his last 5 tries in week 1 of the preseason, 17-4 straight up in his 21 preseason games as the Vikings head coach. That's a bet-on track record, and that's a consistent bet-on track record. You have the backup QB, Mannion. You have the third-stringer, Slaughter. Slaughter was good last year, coming out of nowhere. They're both proven preseason performers. There's enough to like about Minnesota based on that track record alone. And, of course, Peyton, 5-11 straight up and against the spread the last 4 seasons in August. He's covered the spread only twice in 7 tries as a favorite during that span. But the way New Orleans season ended last year, it's not anything that they're going, we got to win, we got to win. What we're interested in is the QB rotation. Taysom Hill, Teddy Bridgewater, bet on. Hill's a dual threat. We love that. Bridgewater can run too. He certainly looked good in the preseason last year for New Orleans when the Saints, I believe, were the highest scoring team in the NFL in August. So if you're taking Minnesota plus, you're taking the leap of faith that the Saints' backup quarterbacks won't be airing it out tonight. And if they do, it might be a long game for Vikings backers, despite Zimmer's track record.
Off the mic, a little bit of final preseason talk here, Teddy. Big Red and the Chiefs say he's set to play Mahomes in game 1 for the first quarter. When we say I've seen him a long time here in the city of Philadelphia, he's played Donovan McNabb quite a bit in that first game. But here's the difference of what usually takes place with Andy Reid. He's done it many times, even in the second games and third games. Let's just say Patrick Mahomes comes out. He looks good. 4 plays, 48 yards and a field goal. Pull him right out of the game. So when we talked about that coaches speak that you look at here, there's no specific timeline. He's not going to play him right up to the end of the first quarter. If he doesn't look good, maybe he plays him a little bit into the second quarter there. So it is a little bit of a give and take. It was interesting to see that line move that we talked about a little bit earlier today. Chad Henne will come in and play the second quarter. But just talk about maybe for a little bit, as you said, expound on that coach's speak where, hey, he's playing the first quarter, he's playing the second quarter. Those circumstances can always change.
They can change. And remember, when the point spread outcomes normally get determined? After halftime. Last night in the game 1 of week 1 of the preseason, the 4 of the 11 games you were in good shape at halftime. Everything else, you're sweating no matter who you have. The Pats were good at the half. The Ravens were good at the half. The Bills had to sweat a little bit at the end. They look good at the half, and the Browns look good at the half. But Buffalo could have lost that game, or Cleveland in the second half. It's not like the first half and the starters in the game playing a little bit longer is an automatic W. And remember, the starters play a little longer, and the coaches, my game plan is to see how our running game works, and let's see how we run against 8 and 9 men in the box. That's not the same as I'm leaving my starters in the game and we're going to chuck it downfield. Chiefs 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread. The last 3 week 1s under Andy Reid, despite all of that long-term success and his solid track record in August.
Football season, Teddy, already underway. It's going to be an exciting, exciting month leading right into the season here at That Betting Show. Thank you for tuning in once again. August 9th, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. Once again, he's Teddy Savranci. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_covers. I'm Donnie Seymour, Right Side VP. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday to set you up for yet another week of football and another day closer to the start of the season. Good luck, everybody.